Ever showed someone a thing and have them not care, only to later have them come back loving this thing and having no recollection of you introducing them to it? What was your thing? Years ago, a friend was telling me about a band he liked. I don't remember which. I said if you like them, then you'll probably really like Florence and the Machine too. He listened to them, said he wasn't really into it. About a year later he started dating a girl. I went to hang out with them and he starts telling me how excited he is for this concert she got them tickets to for a band that she introduced him to and he's totally loving. It was Florence and the Machine. Obviously you should have been dating him if you wanted him to listen. My husband refused to even try salsa for years. I kept encouraging him to try my favorite salsa, which was a fresh salsa from a regional grocery store chain. He wouldn't even entertain it. A few years later, one of his buddies takes him out to a taco place for lunch where he finally tries some dang salsa. He then discovers that he loves salsa. I'm kinda annoyed because he tried it when his friend suggested it one time but dug in his heels and refused to try it for years when I suggested it. One day this man comes home with groceries and is raving about this salsa that I just have to try because it's so good. He freaking pulls out my favorite salsa and acts like he is Christopher freaking Columbus discovering the new world. I was so annoyed and told him that I have had it before. It is my favorite, and I have been trying to get him to take a taste for literal years. Oh, well it's really good. Back in the 80s I got into a band called Poison, and I imported their record at great expense. Like records were $12 and I paid $49.99. Then a few weeks later I took it to a party and everyone hated it so much that someone threw it onto the fire. A couple of weeks later it was released here and went crazy. I go to the same house for a party with the same people, and they won't stop playing the record. I tell them that it is the same one that they burnt and they all accused me of being a liar. You should have taken the record and thrown it into the fire. I showed my sister a combination of foods to make this extremely weird sandwich. She said she hated it. 2 months later she's eating that sandwich and claims that she created that. This is called cryptomnesia. It's when you remember the content, but not the source, so you assume it's your original thought. It's common among comedians. I recommended Discord to my friend group before it really became a thing. Everyone was confused as to why they needed something other than Skype. Then I stopped using it because none of my friends were using it. Fast forward a year or two and I had to find my account again because my friends are telling me about this new thing called Discord. Had the same thing happen. They all whined about it until they started using and now they run a huge server for gaming. I taught my husband how to treat brain freeze by pressing your tongue up against your soft palate at the back of your mouth. He scoffed and said that sounded fake. He also said my cure for hiccups by eating a spoonful of peanut butter was fake. Like 5 years later I go brain freeze and he gets all excited about this cure he knows about and starts telling me to put my tongue on the roof of my mouth. He eventually believed me that it was me who taught him that, but still doesn't believe that he didn't immediately appreciate the cure. My cure for hiccups is to take as deep a breath as possible, hold it in, take 4 mouthfuls of air and enforce them into your lungs as well. Drink some water. Works 100% of the time for me. Wife kept telling me it doesn't work. It never works until last night when she had hiccups and asked me for my technique. It worked. She said I just need you to coach me through it each time I guess. I told my family for years I wanted to build a tiny home and introduce them to the idea. Came back from a semester at school and my dad loaned my brother $60,000 and helped him build one. Didn't remember me ever even bringing it up. I have a friend whose sister died young, 18 in a car accident. Not too long after, we were hanging out showing each other music and she showed me the song If I Die Young by the band Perry. I kinda brushed it off. Didn't listen closely because I was excited about showing her my song next. Later when the song became popular, we were hanging out and the song came on the radio and I was like oh snap I love this song. She reminded me she was the one who introduced me to it and that I had brushed her off at that time. This happened years ago but I still feel like such a selfish bee for not listening to it and realizing how much that song probably meant to her in the aftermath of her sister's untimely death. Hey, we all make mistakes. Hopefully good friends can judge you by the summation of all your actions over the life of your friendship, and not just the bad outliers. Reverse story here because it just happened this weekend. I came home and told my husband that I wanted to watch the Amazon show The Boys, and I explained the premise of the show while he patiently listened. When I was done, he told me that he knows what it's about because he's already watched it and apparently tried to get me to watch it. I do not remember this at all, but I believe it is probably true. He watched it with me and I thought it was great. Props to you for acknowledging the possibility. My mom and I had been trying to get my sister to go to a yoga class with us for months. It's free with our gym membership. Once she goes off to college though, her roommate does yoga and suddenly it's her new favorite thing and she tells me to give it a try. Seriously, you should try this crap. Trust me, yoga nah, love it. This was one of the reasons I went into business for myself. Was working for a larger residential electrical company that doubled in size overnight. When I got hired on, I was in charge of all the service and warranty work. It was an absolute nightmare, but I built the department up from nothing and the company could continue to grow. The owner asked me for some ideas and the ones I offered up he said wouldn't work. Okay, that's fine, I will go back to working in my spot and leave it alone. A little over a month goes by and we're having a meeting and he offers up all these ideas that came to him in a dream a few nights ago. Nope. Those were all my ideas and he didn't know I told all the other managers my ideas before I told him to see what they thought. So it was funny when he tried to take credit and I let him think he got credit. But I knew. We all knew. Either way his ideas, worked out. The company got better and made more money. Owner came to me again for more ideas and I responded, so you can take credit for them. No, I am good. About a couple months later I opened my shop and been doing good since. Star Wars. Da fuck. Right? But this was the early mid-90s and being a nerd wasn't nearly as socially acceptable as it is today. And Star Wars was nerdy because spaceships were involved instead of pirate ships or some crap. Whatever. Anyhow, my friend and I were hanging out. Had to find something to do. We were at the grocery store for snacks and were checking out the video rental section. Remember that? I suggested Star Wars and he told me no, because that's nerd crap and stupid and gay and whatever else 11-year-olds of the day said when they didn't like something. Of course, a year later the Star Wars remaster comes out with all them new scenes, improved special effects, yada yada yada. Guess who's a balls deep, hardcore Star Wars fan now? Wedding vows. My best man used several fairly unusual lines from our wedding vows years later in his own wedding. When we complimented him on his good taste, he said what? Pokemon introduced it to my friend. He went on and on how it was crap and boring. Then a week later he reappears with his own Game Boy and opposite version to mine, trying to tell me how amazing this game is and I should try it. Would even tell our mutual friends he got me into it even though they'd all been playing Pokemon as long as I had and he was the last to get it, but like all things with that fool he quit shortly after realizing he couldn't beat me. Then in high school I went to drop 3 months of schoolwork to him cause he was lazy and barely ever went. His mum told me to just put it in his room in the cabinet above his desk. So I open the cupboard and I see a massive collection of Pokemon stuff, all the Resent games and a bunch of score sheets with his names on them with a bunch of win ticks under his name. It was like he become some weird closet Pokemon hermit. His mum said he names all his rivals after me, not just Pokemon, and marks his victories down on his scorecards. Nah bro, not creepy at all. You weren't just a rival, dude. You were a full-blown arch-freaking nemesis. I introduced a co-worker to Culture Wall. At first he thought Wall's music was dumb. Months later he's talking about having listened to his stuff like it's new. Mother, I showed you this butthole 2 months ago. My buddy just took me to see Culture Wall to convince me. Convinced? I introduced my ex to Dragon Age Origins and when I tried making convo about it he was like, oh, I didn't know you actually played. Bet you had a walkthrough open the whole time. How, what a freaking dickhead. I recommended to that same ex the TV show Suits and he was like meh, and a few months later he was talking about how he and his buddies love this TV show and maybe I ought to try it, but he wasn't sure if I'd understand. I said that was the show I was talking about before and he was just like, oh, huh. I bet there were a lot more cases since I shared a lot with him. And we were pretty much interested in the same things, only he didn't believe that and always dismisses the idea and never really paid actual attention. Ah man. So my brother is a brilliant pianist, but he mainly plays classical and jazz. Doesn't no care for much music beyond like 1950. Growing up, I'd sometimes jam and sing on the piano, playing through our dad's old music books. I would often try and show him things, but he rejected them quite quickly. He's better with this now though. Anyway, I went through a phase of playing a lot of Billy Joel, and it must have slowly seeped into my brother's consciousness. Cut to about a year later, me and my sister are talking about modern music we like, and our brother calmly chimes in, "I really like Billy Joel." Cue stunned faces. Billy Joel. Yes, I think he is an excellent pianist and one of the greatest songwriters of our day. It was annoying, but it also warmed my heart so much. 3. I like to think that I left the sheet music on the piano, and he waited until no one was around, and cautiously emerged like a deer from the woods, and started playing it. So yeah, next time you meet a classical pianist, ask if they can rock out just the way you are and see what happens. P. Yes, the game Borderlands and Borderlands 2. Worked with a couple of guys and would go play BL and later BL2 with one of them on their big screen TV. Was a blast. We'd always ask one of our friends that was into gaming to join us. The more the merrier type deal. He would always say no, say it was a stupid game, etc. It was a running joke he'd never play a group game unless it was his idea. The lo and behold, about 1 year later see a Facebook post from him going off about how awesome BL2 is and how amazing the series is, etc. Angered me a bit. I just try to let it go, but it always irked me as so very try hard. I get a more extreme version of this all the time from my father. I buy or do something new, an induction cooktop, an electric car, an LED bulb, find a new route home, swap cable for Netflix, switch supermarkets, make my own bread, buy a juicer, could be anything. My parents visit, my mom asks about it and my dad start telling me how I should have bought what he uses, because he researched it and it's the best. Whatever your requirements are, cheapest, most reliable, best looking, softest, doesn't matter, whatever it is you're looking for, if you didn't pick the same one he did last time around, then you got it wrong. I guarantee, within 6 months of that conversation, he will tell me about his new X, Y or Z. He will have bought exactly what I did. He will genuinely seem to have no idea that I recommended it to him not long before. I'll point that out, and he'll say, "Ha, no, I think I was already looking at them." Then sometime within the next couple of months, somebody else will ask me about mine when he's around, and he'll interject with, "Yeah, I got one of those a while ago. They're great. Nearly everybody I've told about it has bought one and they love them." That's how Sine Wave 48 found out about them. They couldn't help themselves once they saw mine. Honestly, I don't know why anybody still uses whatever it is he was using 6 months earlier that he insisted I was an idiot for not using. Anyway, rant over. This is one of the first ones in this thread that seems like a deliberate power play rather than a subconscious mistake. Sort of the opposite. My aunt told me about a really cool movie, and it didn't sound great so I didn't watch. But a while later I was bored and saw it was on Netflix or something, so I gave it a watch. It turned out pretty good, I enjoyed it. When I went to tell her I'd seen the movie, she had no recollection of the movie's plot or her ever having mentioned it to me. That's a weird one. In my middle school I told a few of my friends about the idea that time might be an illusion. They acted like I was an idiot. 4 years later they stumbled on the same ideas and acted like it was this huge revelation that they had to tell everyone about. Although now that I've typed this up it's occurred to me that maybe I just wasn't very good at explaining the concept. Hahaha. This was me introducing my mother and brother to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I had seen only bits and pieces of the first 2 seasons, but when season 3 started I was able to watch regularly. My mother didn't know anything about it. My brother thought it was a rip-off of Naruto. The first time the Puppet Master, the bloodbending episode, aired, Mom and bro heckled it. They thought the whole thing was melodramatic and stupid. A standout moment was Mom scoffing at Katara's ghost story at the beginning. It annoyed me, but I refused to quit the show. During the mid-season break I made sure to watch the marathons of seasons 1 and 2. My family ended up joining in and they got hooked. When the reruns got to the Puppet Master, Mom and bro acted like they'd never seen it before. Mom called the ghost story creepy and she and bro were enraptured by the rest of the episode. That show was so good. I wish they'd hurry up and make a live action. It'd be great as long as they shell out for some good actors and stayed true to the bending styles. I'm still bitter about 1917. I tried to convince my girlfriend to go see it with me for like a week after it came out. I don't wanna see a dumb action movie. Eventually I gave up and went by myself. After in one Best Picture, my girlfriend was so excited to show me this new movie that looks really interesting. Sorry babe, saw it last month. You'll have to go on your own. I'm like this with my best friend. All the freaking time. 1997. Me. Wow. There's this new fantasy series called Harry Potter that's really good. Fantasy was never my thing. 2002. So my sister recommended these Harry Potter books and here's my cosplay for the Chamber of Secrets premiere. Harry Potter is my life now. 1999. Me. Dude, you have to see this movie The Matrix. It'll blow your mind. Yeah, okay. 2003. Oh my god. This movie Matrix Reloaded is amazing. And there was one before it? How come you never told me? 1999. Me. Oh man. New Star Wars movies are coming up. You excited? I was never really into Star Wars. I'll watch it eventually. 2002. So my girlfriend made me watch Phantom Menace and here's our cosplay for the Attack of the Clones premiere. Star Wars is my life now. You were always into Star Wars. How come you never recommended these prequels? 2005. Me. Dude, you've got to check out the new Doctor Who. It's fantastic. Yeah, whatever. 2009. So my sister got me watching the new Doctor Who and it's the best thing since sliced bread. Mostly just bands, but especially Fall Out Boy. I remember being pretty young and getting into them when they were still quite small and not known at all here in the UK. I heard them because I had a friend who had a friend who lived in the States, and she'd often send her CDs of bands that we didn't have here, and Fall Out Boy's album Take This to Your Grave was one of them. We loved the heck out of it, and told a lot of our friends to listen to them, as they might like them too. Everyone was just like, what the frick are you on about? You two always listen to the dumbest crap. Then a couple of years later, Sugar, We're Going Down came out, and suddenly everyone was obsessed with them, including all the people we'd been trying to talk to about Fall Out Boy for years. And they were also fake enough to be like, oh yeah, I've always listened to them. I'm their biggest fan, when they just laughed at us for listening to them before. People are such posers when it comes to music sometimes. If you've only just got into a band, just say it. It's not a crime. My dad with Game of Thrones. He refused to even try and watch it after me telling him how good it was. 3 years later he's the biggest fan and asked me if I've ever seen it. My stepbrother told me it looks gay and refused to watch it. He texts me like 6 months later and says, you were right, I freaking love this show, and has a Targaryen decal on his car now. He was devastated by the ending. I introduced a couple of friends to Imagine Dragons. They were less than impressed. Fast forward a couple of years and they are going to a Imagine Dragons concert and asking me if I've heard of this great new band, SMH. Music is weird like that. You can hear something passively several times and it just sounds like noise to you. But then one day, something in your life has changed the way you hear it and all of a sudden it sounds catchy, or there's a lyric that you now identify with that you didn't before. I feel like musical taste is very much something that our life experiences shape and mold. Showed Panic at the Disco to a friend of mine before Pray for the Wicked came out. She didn't seem very impressed. Fast forward a few months and she decides to show me this cool band she found which just released a cool song called High Hopes. She also now has Brendan Urie covered in Petals as her phone background. Dang, I feel old. I thought I was so edgy listening to their first album when it came out and I was 14 thinking I'm emo. This happens a lot with music to me. Well, it did before I moved across the country and don't see or talk to people I used to know a lot. I would show someone a song and they wouldn't really say anything, but months later they would show me that song and ask if I had ever heard of it. I showed a friend this song by Dabin Alive and he said it was okay. A couple days later he posts in our group chat the same song and was like, this song is amazing, and I was like, Dungeons and Dragons. I tried to get some friends into it near the end of 4th edition. but they had no interest. 5th edition comes out and all of a sudden I got friends asking me if I've seen Critical Role and if I'll DM a game for them. Showed my high school girlfriend the band Sublime. Her and her friends all dissed me hardcore for listening to it. Fast forward 2 years and said girlfriend now has a Sublime tattoo on her leg. Whenever I brought up that fact that she hated them in high school, she would get mad and deny that ever happened. My ex did this continually while we were together. Movies, music, TV shows, video games. 6-12 months after I'd show her something and she would dismiss it, it suddenly became great. After the first few times I gave up saying I showed her before. My boyfriend does this crap all the time, and it pisses me off so much. Usually I'll show him a song I like or I'll show him YouTube videos I think are funny and he'll be dismissive about it and not really pay attention. Without fail, he'll then tell me a few days later that his friend Carlos showed him this awesome new song video and he wants to show me, and it's always what I had shown him earlier. The one that peed me off the most though is when he tried to take credit for the infamous Cream of the Crop Randy Savage video that I had shown him after my brother showed me. He thought it was funny, but was pretty dismissive as usual. I crap you not. 3 days later he starts referencing it and tells me that he showed Carlos this hilarious video of Randy Savage. I'm like, excuse me? The video I showed you 3 days ago? And he proceeds to act like I'm crazy, insisting I never showed him the video before. For Halloween you should dress up as his imaginary friend Carlos. I always used to listen to George Ezra, IDK if he's popular in America, but anyway I always listened to him and tried to introduce my friends but they didn't care. Then like a few months later he releases new songs and they're like super popular nationwide and everyone doesn't realize that I was listening to him the whole time. I have a friend that constantly does this, with TV shows, music, even clothing stores. It's borderline creepy. Oh, and not forgetting my ex who basically stole my entire personality. When I was in middle school, we had a free day in class where the teacher would let us bring in music to play during class while we freely studied. It was a small town and the only music anyone knew was what was on the local pop or country radio stations or what was on MTV or VH1 at the time. I was always seeking out new music from other sources. I brought in the Incubus CD Make Yourself. The entire class spent the afternoon complaining about the music. What is this? Why are we listening to this? It's terrible. Okay, you don't like it? Fair enough. Fast forward a few months when a few of their songs got popular and suddenly it's OMG. I love that song. That band is amazing. Have you heard of them? From the same people. Happened several times with different bands when hanging out with friends too. The bandwagon is real. I'm totally the dickhead who usually clowns on something, then ends up totally liking it. Bonus points BC. I often don't give any credit whatsoever to the person who introduced me, working on being better about this and all that open mind stuff. I'm not proud of it, but Twilight. I was in 8th grade in 2005 and the first book came out. I picked it up at Barnes & Noble and it was quickly addicting. Told my friends about it and they made fun of me for reading during recess and carrying the book around in my bag. A couple years later when the movie came out, I had lost interest and realized the series was kind of lame. Those same friends turned into die-hard Twilight fangirls and then decided to obsess over the books. Didn't remember me introducing it to them in the first place, haha. A year before Twilight became big, a guy at my middle school was raving about these amazing books he'd borrowed from his sister. By the time Twilight exploded, I'm sure he hoped everyone had forgotten. The other middle school boys would have eviscerated him. I didn't forget, but I didn't tell anyone either. You're welcome. David M. I am watching Degrassi Jr. Hi, 8 is original, with my 10-year-old. He hated it when I first turned it on 6 months and 10 episodes ago. Fast forward to episode 11 last Saturday, and he was like, I'm so glad we watch this show together because it helps us talk about so many things. A game called Escape from Tarkov came out years ago and I mentioned it to my friends and told them what it was all about. Then about 2 months ago it blew up and they started playing it all day and all forgot I told them about it years ago. Iron Maiden. In college I was huge into them and all my friends didn't like them. Then Rock Band comes out and one of the songs in it was by Iron Maiden. All of a sudden they love the song and think Iron Maiden are the best. They refused to acknowledge that I liked them for years and acted like they introduced them to me. Amos Garrett. He's a Canadian blues guitar legend. Played with lots of big names back in the day, but unless you read the credits on every track you might not know you've heard him. Anyway, he lives down the street from my cousin, so I mentioned that to my uncle. My uncle hadn't ever heard of him, but as soon as I showed him a list of everything Garrett has played on, my uncle realized he's heard him on hundreds of songs. The next time I saw my uncle, the first thing he said was, "Do you remember that guitar player I told you about, Amos Garrett?" If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.